Welcome to the first of 5 videos that we're going to be doing as we think about Easter week and the hope that Jesus brings. So Monday to Friday, and then our Sunday services will very much have that theme of hope as well. Hope to be found in the suffering, the dying, and the rising of Jesus. I know that might be surprising if you're new to Christianity, but I hope if you stick around for these videos, you'll begin to understand and see 5 ways that Jesus is presented as living hope, something we always stand in need of. Our first scene, which we'll get to in a moment, it takes us to the Garden of Gethsemane, to the night of Jesus' arrest, to the night before his death on the cross, as we see him suffering and suffering alone. One of the things I think we understand is that suffering isolates us. Perhaps if you have experienced grief, if you have lived with or been living with long-term illness, you will perhaps know that there are friends who simply don't know what to say and so keep their distance. It can be hard to walk that road, that long road sometimes of suffering with somebody else. If you are suffering from anxiety or depression, or you know people in that circumstances, there is that sense of feeling cut off and isolated from other people, as if an invisible barrier stops you from being with the people you love and doing the things that are enjoyed. We've seen it in the last year, haven't we? We've all been isolated in our own way. Many have gone through extreme circumstances, sort of highs and lows of human experience, and having to do that alone, which was so challenging and distressing. Perhaps you've had periods of self-isolation. It's little wonder that there are so many reports speaking of growing stress levels, fear rising about a loneliness epidemic, because so many have been suffering alone. Well, today what I want to do is to see that in the isolation and the suffering of Jesus in the garden, there is hope and comfort for us in our suffering, in our isolation. So I want to read from Luke chapter 22 and a few verses from verse number 39. Jesus went out as usual to the Mount of Olives, and his disciples followed him. On reaching the place, he said to them, "Pray that you will not fall into temptation." He withdrew about a stone's throw beyond them, knelt down and prayed, "Father, if you are willing, take this cup from me. Yet not my will, but yours be done." An angel from heaven appeared to him and strengthened him, and being in anguish, he prayed more earnestly, and his sweat was like drops of blood falling to the ground. What is Jesus experiencing? He is experiencing anguish. It's a word of deep sorrow, a sorrow so deep he sweats blood, a sorrow so intense it almost kills him, a grief so intense he needs an angel to come and strengthen him. Here is a reminder that Jesus didn't simply glide through life, that he is the eternal Son of God, and yet in becoming one of us and being made fully human, he suffers like us and with us and knows stress. So that in Jesus we don't have someone who is distant and remote, but one who is fully sympathetic, one who can say to us, "I understand, I've been there." Notice that when Jesus prays, he prays to his Father. A reminder that Jesus has lived in this eternal fellowship of perfect love. So the question is, why is the Son of God experiencing this agony and this fear? 2 reasons we can recognize. First, the mention of the cup. In verse 42, "Father, if you're willing, take this cup from me." Now, that was Old Testament imagery of a cup containing the wrath of God, the judgment of God, and that was to be drunk down by his enemies, those who opposed him and opposed his will. But here, is Jesus, the perfect, sinless Son of God, and he would drink it down to the dregs. He anticipates that, and he feels anguish because he is facing this death. That he is going to load guilt and shame and the sin of the world onto his shoulders. He will bear it and he will die for it. And that causes him a sense of agony. And that takes us to the struggle, the internal struggle that we find in Jesus. Father, if you are willing, take this cup from me, yet not my will, but yours be done. Notice that Jesus, in his human will, did not want to be cut off. He did not want to face judgment. It was a horror to him. He understood the holiness of God and the reality of judgment. And that was something that caused him to be fearful. And so he prays, if you are willing, Father, is there any other way to save people from their sin and bring them to yourself? And Jesus knew the answer to that prayer being a no. There was no other way to save sinners. There is no other hope except for Jesus dying in our place. So where is the hope for us in Jesus suffering alone, as we see pictured in the garden here? Well, what we discover, and we see it in the rest of that evening, that in his time of trial, in his time of intense need, Jesus' friends would fail him and abandon him. They would run. They would deny even knowing him. But Jesus does not abandon them, and Jesus will not fail us. Jesus, we see walking obediently, lovingly into the darkness of God's judgment in order to save people like us, so that if we trust him, he will not abandon us in our moments of darkness, in our feeling of isolation. So in his agony, there is the hope for our comfort. He will suffer and die alone so that we might always enjoy his peace and his presence with us. So there is the hope that we can find in the isolation of Jesus. More again tomorrow.